Hi, I'm Tracy Burns. I'm a student at Community College of Philadelphia in the Humanities 102 course, and this is my final. And for my final, I've chosen to speak about Meditations of First Philosophy by Rene Descartes. So, Descartes tells a story about how he now believes things that he initially thought were true turned out not to be. So he begins to ponder this, which ultimately leads him to decide he needs to clear his mind of any preconceived notions and start from scratch. Once his mind is clear, he'll be able to really think about everything in its individuality and then decide if what he previously thought to be true is in fact true, or if it can ultimately be disproven. Through his journey, he begins to realize quickly that almost all things can be disproven. But one thing he keeps coming back to is his famous line of, "I think, therefore I am." He truly believes that the one thing he cannot disprove is his existence. He knows he is here, and everyone else can see he's here. Therefore, it is the only thing no one can take away from him to prove to be false. He builds on his existence and realizes he is thinking, so not only does he exist, but he exists and he thinks. So these are both now considered to be true by Descartes. While still rebuilding his thoughts, he then moves on to God. Does God exist? He does believe God exists because he's too much of a higher power and pretty close to perfect to have been created in someone's mind as some sort of fictional character. So he concludes God does exist. In the first meditation, Descartes says the following: "All that up to the present time I have accepted as most true and certain, I have learned either from the senses or through the senses, but it is sometimes proved to me that these senses are deceptive, and it is wiser not to trust entirely to anything by which we have once been deceived." This, I believe, is when Descartes finally decides he's going to clear his mind of all his thoughts and all things previously known to him, rethink these thoughts, and decide without any persuasions from society if things are in fact true. He then goes on to think about himself and realizes he does in fact exist. This is in the first meditation. He realizes he is he and he does exist. In the second meditation, Descartes realizes he does not only exist, but he thinks. All of this thinking about what is true or not true has finally made him realize there is more to him than just his body. There's also his mind. He's able to think about any one object, multiple objects, decide if they're in fact true to original form or thinking, or if they're actually false. With this in mind, he's able to sleep and rest his mind, then start the cycle all over again when he wakes up, continues on his quest of thinking about what's true and not, and by the end of this meditation, he states, "I am, however, a real thing and really exist, but what thing? I have answered, a thing which thinks." In the third meditation, he talks about God. Does God really exist? Or is God something else that society made up and people just ultimately believe in? Descartes concludes that since God is powerful and almost perfect, he must really exist. For without God, he believes he himself would not exist and would not be able to think, nor would he have his mind. I think based on all of the thoughts in these three meditations, Descartes believes he has proven all of his points on why his thinking is what should only be considered to be true. But when you think about the society in which he lived, or we actually still live in today, all of our beliefs are based on the overall consensus of what society wants us to believe, never really considering if things are really true or just said to be true. Anything we think that does not conform to society and what society thinks makes us ultimately a person that could be considered an outsider or even just a little weird or different. So, although Descartes may have been out of the normal element during his time in his writing and thinking, and it's probably still out of the normal element in today's society, I think it leads to a very good lesson we can all take away from his readings, and that's to be your own voice and mind. If you don't believe in what others do, this is fine. We're allowed to have our own thoughts and to disagree with others. Of course, we'd like to be respectful of others. We're all entitled to our own opinions. But before we give our opinion on a matter, because ultimately we may disagree with others, we should really have thought about it and rationalized why it may or may not be true in order to prove our points. So you don't want to just give an opinion and state this is what it is. You want to be able to back up your rationale. So after reading this, I began to think about whether or not I agreed or disagreed with Descartes, and I realized it doesn't really matter. I'm my own person. He's his own person. You're your own person. We all are our own people, and we're all entitled to our own opinions. We all have our own thoughts. We all have our own minds. And at the end of the day, we're allowed to believe what we want to believe. So, although I think Descartes has great thoughts and valid points, I don't necessarily have to agree with him. Overall, I would recommend these readings to others because if you get nothing else out of them, you will at least realize it's okay to have your own thoughts and you don't always have to agree and conform to society. We are our own person and God created us to be equal in general, but it doesn't mean we have to have equal thoughts. We are allowed to be individuals. Thank you.